This video is going to walk you through the completed project for job cost analysis for Ivy Corporation. We will be using a smaller data set called the tutorial data. Review the case instructions on how to download the tutorial data. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to import data into Power BI. I've already opened Power BI here, and so I'm going to go through getting the data by clicking on Get Data. Once I click on Get Data, I will have Power BI open up and I will select the data type that I want to import. I'm going to import an Excel file, so I will select Excel and then select Connect. Now I'm going to look for my file. This is for the Ivy company, and I'm going to use the tutorial data set. I'll select the file that I want to import, and then I'll click Open. So now we'll wait for the data to load. If you're unfamiliar with Power BI, I would suggest you take time to review the overview video. It walks you through the different types of areas of Power BI. So now we need to select which worksheets we want to include in our Power BI desktop. There's only one worksheet here, the data worksheet, and so I'll select that one. This is what my data looks like, and then I'll click Load. We'll wait for it to load. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to format the dollar amounts for all data with the accounting format and 0 decimal places. So to do that, I will click on the data area, and this is where my data is at. So I need my amounts to be shown as accounting format with 0 decimal places. So from the amount column, I'll make sure that I have the amount column selected. I will click on Modeling, and then I will come over to the formatting area and I will select Currency and then the dollar English. It will update my amounts, and I'll check to make sure that I have 0 decimal places showing. So we have now formatted the data. The next thing we need to do is review the data for default properties. Power BI automatically assumes that numbers that are loaded into your data are going to need to be summarized or totaled. This is not always correct. For example, in the job number, I don't want these numbers added together. Instead, I want them to be independent numbers. The same would be true for customer number. It would be of no benefit if the customer numbers were all added together. So I need to change the default here. And to do that, I'll click on Job Number, and then I'll notice that over here in my Fields area, there's a sigma sign right here. That specifies that Power BI is defaulting to summarization. So I'll come up here to the Properties area, and in the default summarization area, I will select Don't Sum. Notice by doing that, it makes my sigma go away over here. I'm going to do the same thing for customer numbers. So I'm going to select customer number. I'm going to come up to the default, and I'm going to select Don't Summarize. Okay, there we go. We're all set. We now have our data ready to begin our first table visualization. I'm going to take a moment though and just go through and save my project so that I don't lose any of my information. Okay, now we're ready to create our first table. I will go to the report mode to create a table. Let's begin by renaming this page down here, Table 1, instead of Page 1. To do that, I'll right-click on the page, I'll select Rename Page, and I'll type in Table 1. Okay, now we're going to create a table visualization that shows total revenue, total direct materials, total direct labor, total manufacturing overhead, and total gross profit. To do that, I will click in the visualization area and I will select the table visualization. So I'll click that, and then over in the field area, I'm going to select what I want to show. So I know that the general ledger accounts are where I see my revenue, materials, labor, and overhead. And then I know that I also want to show the dollar amounts. So notice that by doing that, I will see that my general ledger account is listed here with my dollar amounts. Now this number here, this total number here, is total gross profit. I could rename that if I wanted to, and let me show you how to do that. So by clicking on the table, I will come over here to in the visualizations area, I'll click on Format. And then I will come down to the total area here. Instead of it saying total, I'm going to say that I want to call it gross profit. And so now we'll see that we have now labeled our total area as gross profit. So that's our first table. Now let's take a look at building table number 2. In table number 2, we're going to do a table visualization similar to what we just did, but we're going to need to do it for each country and for each state or province. In order to do this, we'll need to learn how to use the slicer visualization. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to click on the plus sign to add a new page. I will rename my page to Table 2, and now I'm ready to again create my visualization. So we'll create a table visualization by selecting Table, and then I want to show the country amount, the facility, the general ledger, and also the dollar amount. Now notice I can't really see my table here, so in order to do that, I'm going to move my mouse over until I see the double arrows, and then I'll just drag it until we can see it. Okay, great. So now we have a table that shows all the information that I need. But I want to sort or slice the table so that it shows only each country and each state or province. To do that, I'll add a slicer. So the slicer visualization is going to be this visualization right here that has a little cone on it. So I'll select the slicer, and then the first slicer that I want to do is by country. So I'll select country over in my fields area. Notice that gives me a slicer that allows me to select by Canada or the United States. See what happens when I select US. It filters and only shows the data for the US. By the way, if I want to clear this, I can always select the eraser here and it will be cleared. Now I also want to do a slicer that shows state or province. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select the slicer, and then I am going to come over here and I'm going to select facility. That'll show the provinces or the states that the facility, that the profit is being generated in. For example, if I want to select Texas, I'll see that it updates to only showing the Texas facility. Okay, that's it. You're now ready to answer the questions to table number 2. Let's look at building table number 3. In table number 3, we're going to determine how much revenue was generated by each job, and I'll use a slicer visualization for this. We're going to need to determine what the total amounts of direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead are for each job, and then also determine how much gross profit was generated by each job. And then we're going to need to use a multi-row card to figure out how much each job generated in gross profit and sort those by the most and least amounts. So let's add a new table. We're going to rename this page so that it says Table 3. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my table visualization. So I'll add a table visualization. I want to show the information by general ledger account and also by amount. So I've got that information listed here. Now I need to see all of my general ledger amounts by job number. So I'm going to create a slicer visualization. I'll click on slicer, and then I want to do it by job number, so I'll select job number. But notice what it did here. This is weird. It didn't show me a list of all the job numbers. Instead, it showed me a range of all the job numbers. I want to change that. And to do that, I'll click on this down arrow right here so that I can select the type of slicer that I want. I want a list. So now notice that it now lists all of my different job numbers out here. So that's the first part. The second part that I need to do is I also want to be able to sort by general ledger account. So I'll add another slicer. And this slicer, I'm going to have it be sorted by general ledger. So I'll select general ledger. Okay, so now I can say, oh, I want to see job number 3557, and I only want to see direct labor. So I can clearly sort by the things that I only want to see. Now let's make a multi-row card. A multi-row card is over here in the visualization area, and it's going to be the one that says multi-row card. I'll click on that. Now in the multi-row card, I want to show which job generated the most gross profit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select job number, and then I'm going to select amount. And that's going to show me which job generated the most gross profit. Now I can sort this information by least to most as far as gross profit amounts. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here in my area where I can do my options, and I'll click on the $3 signs here. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to say that I want to sort by amount. And notice that now it provides the sorting of gross profit by each of my job numbers from the smallest to the greatest number. So that's table number 3. Now we're ready to do our last table, which is table number 4. So let's create a new page, renaming the page Table 4. And then we're ready to create a table that is going to show how much revenue is generated by each sales rep, but we want this to be shown as a clustered column chart. We'll also have to use a slicer visualization. And then notice in part C of the case, it asks us to show how much of each sales rep's revenue is generated from facilities in just Canada, and also how much is generated from facilities in the United States. In order to get to the answer to C, we'll have to modify the cluster column chart to include the country. But let's start by first just showing revenue. So we're going to create a cluster column chart. A cluster column chart is over here in our visualizations, and it's going to be the fourth one over that says clustered column chart. I'll select that. So now I want my cluster column chart to show revenue that was generated by sales rep. So I'm going to select sales rep, and then I'm going to select dollar amount. This is going to show me the total amount of gross profit that was generated by each sales rep. So in order to show just the revenue, I need to create a slicer visualization. So I will add in the slicer visualization, and I want to be able to sort by general ledger. So I'll select general ledger. Now notice what this does is now I can select revenue and I can identify the amount of revenue that each of my sales reps generated. And I can determine which sales rep generated the most and least amount of revenue. So now the last question, how much of each sales rep revenue is generated from facilities in Canada and from facilities in the United States? Well, this only shows total revenue. So now I want to add information about each of the facilities, each of the countries. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on my cluster column chart so that it's selected, and then I'm going to add in the data field country. So I'll select that, and notice what that does. It now tells me which of my sales reps generated how much revenue in the United States and also in Canada. So that's it. This was a quick video tutorial of this project from start to finish that uses a small tutorial data set rather than the full data set. This tutorial video was created by Tracy Miller Nobles and is part of our Power BI video series on accountingisanalytics.com. Thank you.